Hello, I'm Hayden, your host, licensed mental health therapist, Taurus sun, and the first to get deep at any party, and this is the Evergreen RX. Alright, welcome to this Minidose. Today we are going to be talking about a trend, kind of based off of a question I saw online, kind of based off of my own desire to talk about this trend and to explore it with you guys. And that is the girlification on TikTok. Girl dinner, girl math, and what that's doing for us or not doing for us as girls, gals, if it's really like beneficial? Are we in on the joke? Is it camaraderie and reclamation and empowerment? Or is it a step back? Maybe it's a mix of both. I don't know. I did some digging on the online forums and heard some really interesting points of view from people. And I think I've got some things to say. So strap in. This should be short and sweet and give us some interesting things to think about, to be more critical, more intentional, and more aware and conscious with how we engage online and how trends impact our lives. So the post I saw online is pretty long, but the gist of it is this person was saying, hey, I'm seeing these trends online, girl dinner, girl math, and they bother me. Am I overthinking it, or are these trends bad? Because, their main complaints were girl dinner, for example, which I'm going to assume all of you guys already know what girl dinner is. But if not, go to TikTok, look up girl dinner. You'll find plenty of videos. And this person was saying, this is kind of glorifying like non-nutritious meals. And then girl math is kind of like perpetuating this idea that women aren't good with money and don't know how to handle their finances. And also an overall complaint with like using the term girl. There's a lot of this like, I'm a girl, a girly. And they kind of mentioned that more women online are like infantilizing themselves and the bimbo trend. And, I'm not going to get too deep into all of that today, but this was their main qualms. Like, what's going on online with us girls? Kind of girls playing into being dumb, wanting to be stay-at-home girlfriends. This is the larger issue, but just particularly focusing on these girl trends, girl math, girl dinner. My first take, I'm going to be honest, my first take going into recording this was like, I don't like the trends. Something about it also rubbed me the wrong way. Like, why are we acting like we don't know how to do math? I don't understand. This seems like there's no good ending for trending illogical math practices, money practices. But damn, I read some good points online. And this is what I love about it. This is why I want to talk about it, because women are so smart that sometimes we start going meta with this shit. Like, so let's just start with girl dinner. A major issue with this trend is that it would be promoting non-nutritious, like low-calorie meals, which is then like, what are we talking about? Are we getting into disordered eating? Like girls eating something for dinner that's not even enough nutrients that they would need to properly fuel their body? But I saw the argument on what about the reclamation and kind of the empowerment of not falling into the food preparing caregiver role women are so often put into. Like, girl dinner is the freedom to be like, I'm not cooking tonight. I'm not making anything that looks presentable. I'm not making a meal. I am throwing together the things that I have because I don't have the energy to do something else, or I don't even want to do something else, and I don't have to. So kind of reclaiming that power and like stepping out of that role as caregiver and food provider into like, this is what's going to work for me. This is what's most realistic. So I have the right to do that. That is a compelling argument to me. I do understand where that's coming from. That desire to just like throw a carrot on your plate along with, a handful of nuts and half of a block of cheese you have left and a loaf of bread, which, side note, peasant core? No. That's a way to eat. A little loaf of hunk of bread, pile of grapes. Come on. And there's also this aspect of intuitive eating that I kind of saw floating around, which I thought was interesting on like, some of those nights where you don't want a meal, what we'd consider a meal. Like the food groups that would go together in a way that looks like a dinner plate. Maybe what is sounding best to you is this combination of random foods and enough of them where you feel full and you feel satisfied. And what's wrong with that? Like listening to your body, listening to your energy levels on that day and honoring them. That's a beautiful idea. I think it is a little bit encapsulated in a simplified package, but that's how trends work. So I think there is a certain level of understanding, like this is just the digestible way that we all started talking about a common trend of girl dinner. And now everyone is relating over this thing that we all do without knowing that it was a thing. And then that kind of packages it into this nice format to be able to be studied or kind of critiqued in a way to understand maybe some bigger underpinning of what's going on. Like kind of exploring the question, like why are there so many girls out there that relate to this and embrace this and love this girl dinner behavior? Then we can actually start to have like a concentrated amount of content and women sharing their experience with girl dinner to be like, hey, maybe this is actually indicative of something larger that we're rebelling against. Like this idea of having to provide in this way night after night, meal after meal, every day for yourself or for the people that you care for in your life as kind of the stereotypical woman role, because most often we are going to be looked to. I'm fortunate enough that I have a boyfriend that cooks. I don't have to do this shit. And I can actually fathom what it would be if he expected me to do this. Because I'm like, I'm busy. I'm working. I don't want to have to cook all the time. It's not my passion. It doesn't give me joy. I don't like to be in the kitchen. I don't like to cook. It's not like some beautiful craft for me. And so, I think there is some empowerment into this trend the further I dig into it. Girl math, on the other hand, guys, I feel a little bit different about. So let's dive into that. Girl math feels less related to girls, women specifically, and feels like something probably all people do to some degree. We all have our little money tricks, money hacks to make us feel better. And I also think there is more potential for negative impacts from this trend. Girl dinner feels a little bit like you're in the club. Like we're in on the joke. It's not even really a joke. It's just like acknowledging and giving name to a phenomenon. Girl math feels a little less like we're in on the joke. Some of the videos I watched on girl math, not all of them, but some of them were like women explaining to a man in their life girl math, or like two men talking to each other about what girl math is. Like I saw a couple podcasts where it was like men reacting to girl math, and that started to feel a little icky to me. I was like, okay, so these men are kind of reacting to girl math, how silly it is, how it doesn't make any sense, how ridiculous it is. Some of that urge to explain why, paying in cash doesn't make something free. Like we don't understand that. And it felt a little more of a slippery slope. I saw some pretty sad comments in a way that I didn't see the same kind of thing with girl dinner. And again, I'm just on like one section of the internet and just like watch some videos. So like I don't know the whole breadth of all of this. But I saw like one comment that said, "This is why there's not many women in accounting or finance." Okay, well, that feels like a step back. There was another comment that said, "Imagine if all women in Congress thought this way, we'd be at $66 trillion in debt, not 33 trillion." And, you know, these comments were from men, or at least their profile appeared to be. And while they're not the most nefarious, it definitely is perpetuating this idea like, damn, this is why we don't have women handle the money. And I don't know what the long-term effects of that are. You know, and I don't think there's any problem with having a little bit of fun with things and not taking stuff so seriously on how people on the internet are going to interpret your video that's obviously satirical about, you know, women's views on money. But what's the line between playfulness and perpetuating stereotypes that are harmful to women as a collective? Best argument I saw for the girl math trend is talking about how it was showing that women have intuitive sense for something that has been over intellectualized and studied, like these behaviors of consumerism and, you know, financial responsibility or irresponsibility that has been studied or tried to be understood by people in the economic field, which I get. But that also means that women are displaying that they maybe participate in these financial behaviors that are seen as irresponsible. At the end of the day, like, I really don't think that this is like creators on TikTok and people that participate in trends, like real responsibility. All of these issues, you know, the way that girl math and girl dinner maybe play into stereotypes, or the way that certain people are going to interpret them to show and prove in some way that women are less than because of this behavior. Like, at the end of the day, I do get that's not really our responsibility as anyone who identifies as a woman. But I think it's worth looking at with a critical eye before engaging or knowing how to consciously engage in these trends. I read a fantastic article that I will link below of somebody talking about how these girl trends in general, and they also talked about like the that girl trend, contribute to the gender binary. Again, kind of showing these lines between the battle of the sexes. And they talked about how it's also like this survival mechanism, almost women responding to capitalism and misogyny in the way that we've understood what is valued or what is preferred for women in this society that we live in. And some of these trends kind of reflect that preference, even the term girl, like instead of woman. You know, why is youth so valued? This kind of silly, goofy, sometimes undermining terminology that we use for ourselves. And I think that this is a really complicated topic. Like, I'm barely scratching the surface. And again, I am 24 years old. I barely know what the hell I'm talking about. But I want to open up the conversation with other girls this age. You know, I know my demographic of who listens to this podcast, and it's girls like me. And I think we have to be talking about it with each other, too, to figure out what sits right with us. Do we want to reclaim power through these trends and say, fuck the people that misinterpret and, you know, don't get the joke, don't get the satire? Or do we not? You know, for me right now, I don't want to participate. I watched a bunch of those videos and thought, you know, this isn't for me. This doesn't feel right. But that's a choice that I get to make. The same way that anybody making content that's different than mine, that, you know, leans into bimbo culture, wants to be a stay-at-home girlfriend, loves girl math, is also entitled to that opinion and to that kind of content creation. We're still so early on in understanding the internet and the impacts of social media that there is a lot of trial and error, there is a lot of play, and there's always going to be different choices of expression and creation and complexities with playing out these responses to the harsh capitalistic umbrella that we live under in an online forum, in a global, viral space. So let me know your thoughts. I want to hear if you have a reason for or against these trends that you didn't hear me talk about here. And I hope that this gave you a little bit more to chew on. Sometimes I think trends come in so quick and sweep control so fast that we're kind of just caught up in them. And so kind of taking a step back, pausing, thinking about it, can sometimes be really illuminating to where we fall and can help us get to know ourselves better, which at the end of the day, I think that's a huge point of this whole podcast. So there we have it. I will link that article I mentioned down below. Go ahead, follow me on Instagram, on TikTok. You never know. Maybe you'll catch me doing one of these trends one day. So you might want to keep up and see if I'm a hypocrite at some later point. But that's the fun part of this, and the fun part of life is that we get to continually reassess and change our minds. I hope you found something interesting from today's episode. Join me next week. We'll continue to deep dive into all things wellness and building our prescription for living well, living the best life that we can. So I'll catch you then. Bye.